Hello and welcome to Bible History You Never Saw Coming. I'm Anne Lafferty and I'll be reading from my book, Let All Who Read This Book Be Warned, that the only thing new in the world is a history you don't know. Two stories of lies and deceit appear in our tale today. Abraham's family is the most important family in Israel. In fact, they are Israel. Why does the Bible need to remind us of lies and deceit? Why can't stories wrap up nicely with the main character off the hook for wrongdoing? As we know, life doesn't work that way. Besides, lies and deceit are easier than truth-telling. Much of the internet business today is based on lies and deceit. No one seems to care. We just watch out for bad deals. In the biblical narrative, people lied because they felt their very lives were at stake. Let's take a look. Once again, the brother deception was used by Abraham to avoid being designated the husband of a woman viewed as starkly beautiful in old age. In review, Philistine kings had absolute power, and making Sarah a widow so he could marry her would not at all be beyond King Abimelech. They were in his territory, camping. Not only that, but in the case of widowhood, a nice dowry would arrive with all of Abraham's family, servants, and livestock. This was a very promising scenario, and certainly an easy fix for the king. Therefore, Abraham lied as to his sister again, and Abimelech, believing him, took the sister into his family. All hell broke loose. The women in the family immediately became unable to conceive, causing consternation and turmoil. The Almighty appeared to Abimelech in a dream and told him, "If you touch this woman, you're as good as dead." Most of us haven't received such a message, but some of us might have benefited from it. Anyway, to return to her story, the Almighty said, "If you don't return her, you and all of yours will die." We may note that later, Scripture states that the giant Goliath and his brothers were Philistines. Giantism with the 6 fingers exhibited by one of Goliath's brothers indicate Nephilim blood. Therefore, the Lord wasn't just joshing with the king's wish to make Sarah part of that bloodline. We may also note that in the previous wifely misadventure in Egypt, God did not threaten Pharaoh's life. It's because the bloodline was not threatened. To return to the ongoing saga, on the instant, the lovely new woman in the family became a hot potato, with Abimelech juggling just as fast as he could. Naturally, Abimelech protested his innocence. "Hey, the man said she was his sister. I didn't know the score. I was infatuated and then blindsided." Of interest, this is one example of people knowing that adultery is wrong, and therefore an indication that the commandments of God were enforced before they were written on stone for Moses. What did Jesus say later? If you would enter into life, what? Keep the commandments. The Almighty, with fairness, stated that he was indeed aware of the situation and simply told Abimelech to return Sarah to Abraham. He did return Sarah, fully expecting the blessing the Lord had promised him, but demanded an immediate explanation from Abraham. He made a strong point. Why had he been treated so shabbily and the lives of his entire family threatened? He was a generous person and allowed Abraham to pasture in his territory. He had accepted the sister in good faith. The point of the story is that deception is usually found out one way or the other, but also the underlying message of mixed blood being under the ban of the Almighty. Note that all of Abimelech's family were stricken with barrenness. They could not reproduce the bloodline, just in case the king ignored the pointed message from the Almighty. Abraham confessed his lie, and Abimelech gave him some cattle and, of interest, some silver because of the offense to Sarah. It appears that Abimelech may have had more concern for women than either Abraham or his nephew, Lot. Abraham prayed for Abimelech, and the childbearing ban was lifted from the king's family so that the family could endure by the mercy of God. Meanwhile, what had happened to Lot? Lot was afraid to stay in the city in which they had sought refuge. Why? Zoar was just as genetically compromised, just as wicked as Sodom had been, and the fear of its destruction might have been preeminent. Lot had now lost everything. He was living in a cave. Certain people like to prey upon those who have lost everything. Dangerous people prowled the mountains beyond Zoar. In retrospect, as with many life events, we can see that Lot made unwise choices and ended up destitute. To review the situation, Lot was treated by Abraham as a worthy kinsman. However, Lot chose the very best of pasture when given the opportunity by his uncle, thereby ignoring his uncle's elder status and the fact that everything he owned was liberally granted by his uncle originally. The pasture was located in the valley of the Jordan, a hotbed of Nephilim activity. When next we encounter Lot, he's living in the city of Sodom and is married. We might assume his wife was a woman of Sodom and her daughters naturally of her persuasions, whatever they were. Scripture doesn't say. We might also remember that Lot had other family members who had chosen to reject the angel's offer for salvation. When the angels arrived at Sodom, we see Lot sitting at the gates, an indication of prominence, yet we hear that he was vexed by the evil in Sodom. Well, so what? Many of us may be vexed by evil, but we might continue to accept it and so condone it. Sadly, once we begin to live a morally unchecked life, it tends to become a free fall, and most of us don't realize it until we hit the ground. Lot was about to roll off a cliff. His daughters decided, probably within reason, that no man would ever marry them in their destitute condition. Why were they reluctant to go outside the mountain to seek a husband? Consider that they've been moved out of at least 2 cities, their hometown destroyed in a horrible conflagration, which they had witnessed. So as far as they were concerned, there wasn't any man left to marry them. If they were to seek husbands, they would be running the risk of entering a city that might soon be destroyed by God. They would also be risking rape and ruin with no real kinsman backing. Lot was elderly and poor and had no men servants to assist him if the push came to shove. One day, the firstborn told the younger one, "Our father is old, and there's no man in the land to have sex with us, as everybody else throughout all the earth does. Let's get our father drunk and have sex with him." Wow, unbelievable. But consider the source. And on Monday, we'll consider with this unbelievable story. But remember, in the meantime, never lose your ambition to think.